Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. The country is mourning as the killer of conservative activist Charlie Kirk is still on the run. President Trump says it's a dark moment for America. What we know so far.
President Trump reacts to the death of Charlie Kirk, calling him a champion of young conservatives. How voices from across the political spectrum are reacting to Kirk's killing and condemning political violence. Plus, we take a look at the meteoric rise of the young conservative and the legacy he leaves behind.
And today's 24th anniversary of the tragic events of September 11th. Memorial events will be taking place across the country, including in Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, and in New York City. We'll have that coverage next.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Today is Thursday, September 11th. You're watching NTD Good Morning.
Today, an important and solemn day to remember those who lost their lives 24 years ago. We'll have more coverage on that, but up first, we start with some devastating news this morning. Most people have already, of course, heard this. The country is mourning for conservative activist Charlie Kirk. He was killed yesterday in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination. The suspect still on the run. Kirk was shot in the neck while taking questions at a Utah Valley University event where the suspect remains at large.
The 31-year-old was a high-profile conservative voice, especially for younger generations. Many of us at NTD have personally met and interviewed Charlie on several occasions. He was always kind and extremely generous with his time and gave very thoughtful and respectful answers to the questions given to him. Charlie was a friend of President Trump and his sons, Donald Jr. and Eric.
Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA when he was just 18 to bridge the divide between conservative students and the liberal majority opinions that are on college campuses. And he was especially famous for taking questions from students about topics ranging from climate change to faith and family values.
And Turning Point USA writes, "It is with a heavy heart that we confirm that Charlie James Kirk has been murdered by a gunshot. Charlie leaves behind a wife, Erica, and 2 young children. He will be missed."
Meanwhile, a manhunt is underway as authorities still have no suspect in custody.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has reactions from witnesses and updates from officials on the tragic killing.
Love the tent so it would be in the camera and made us move. What was that?
He just got shot! Authorities say a lone perpetrator is suspected of firing the single gunshot that killed Charlie Kirk from a distant rooftop sniper's nest on campus. The perpetrator remains at large. State police issued a statement on Wednesday night saying that 2 men had been detained and one was interrogated by law enforcement, but both were subsequently released. They say the pair have no current ties to the shooting. Deseret News reporter Emma Pitts shares her experience witnessing the shooting of the father of 2.
And I just kind of watched him close his eyes and fall in.
Pitts says everyone took cover on the ground.
We prayed for Charlie's family and we prayed for the safety of everyone. Oh. Sorry. And then after about maybe 30 seconds, everyone started sprinting. So then we sprinted with them behind Charlie's tent. I don't know what happened.
Shortly before the shooting, Kirk is seen cheerfully throwing hats to eager supporters and then taking in the size of the big crowd.
That's a lot of people, Utah, I'll tell you what.
Right before his tragic killing, Kirk was asked a question about mass shootings.
Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
Frightened students and others at Utah Valley University raced for shelter after the gunman fired a fatal shot.
There were gunshots.
The crowd ducks after a gunshot rings out. Chaos ensues as people flee in panic. Students reacted to the murder of Kirk.
Everyone was just jumping on top of each other. No one was trying to get shot. Everyone was just covering each other up because no one knew if there was going to be more shots fired. I wish there was a better security. I was a little surprised when I walked into the courtyard and there wasn't any metal detector.
This witness says he's surprised the shooting happened in Utah, where Kirk has so much support.
Obviously, the opposition was here, and now we're looking at a murder scene.
A witness captured the moment Charlie Kirk was carried into an SUV after the shooting. Officials held a press conference on the cold-blooded killing of Kirk.
Political influencer Charlie Kirk was shot in an event at the Utah Valley University. He was taken by private vehicle to Timpanogos Hospital, where he later passed.
We have full resources devoted to this investigation, including tactical, operational, investigative, and intelligence.
We firmly believe that UVU is a place to share ideas and to debate openly and respectfully. Any attempt to infringe on those rights has no place here.
I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people.
Tearful supporters of Charlie Kirk gathered on Wednesday outside the hospital where Kirk was taken.
No one can tell you what you can or can't believe, and the fact that Charlie Kirk had to die because of his beliefs is just truly heartbreaking, and I'm showing up so that the young Republicans of America don't give up because of this.
I've been watching Charlie for years, and his messages have been so important to me, and they've been very educational and just given me a lot of hope in my life.
I'm here because free speech shouldn't be violated, because we shouldn't murder each other as Americans. We should listen to each other.
Utah Valley University campuses will be closed until September 14th. All classes, campus events, and other operations will be suspended during this time. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And more reactions are pouring in after Charlie Kirk's assassination.
President Trump and other leaders are honoring Kirk's life, condemning the political violence behind his death, and calling for unity.
President Trump called Kirk's killing heinous, praising him as a patriot, a man of deep faith, and a champion for young conservatives.
Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God. Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
The White House quickly moved to honor Kirk. President Trump ordered all U.S. flags to fly at half-staff until September 14th. Trump also posted on Truth Social calling Kirk a truly great American patriot, writing that no one understood the hearts of America's youth better. Trump also promised to find and punish those responsible.
My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
First Lady Melania Trump reflected on the personal cost to Kirk's young children, saying their lives will now be filled with stories instead of memories and photographs instead of laughter. Kirk is survived by his wife, Erica, and 2 children, aged 1 and 3 years old. Donald Trump Jr. described Kirk as more than a friend, calling him a brother and one of the most courageous and principled men he had ever known. Secretary of State Marco Rubio joined the chorus of grief, saying Kirk's commitment to America's future will resonate for decades to come. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth prayed for Kirk along with American service members in Washington.
The only assurance I can take is that I know he is with his Lord and Savior right now. He has heard the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt credited Kirk with encouraging young conservatives like her to step into public life. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. mourned Kirk as a defender of free speech. Reactions came from across the political spectrum. Former President Biden said he is praying for Kirk's family. He called for an end to political violence, saying there is no place for it in America. Former Vice President Kamala Harris condemned the act, encouraging all Americans to work together to ensure this doesn't lead to more violence. Former President Obama weighed in as well, saying this kind of violence has no place in our democracy. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers paused for a moment of silence on the House floor to honor Charlie Kirk. But the solemn tribute quickly gave way to shouting from some members. House Speaker Mike Johnson told CNN the news of Kirk's shooting created a highly charged environment in the room.
Something happened on Capitol Hill today. We were talking right before we came on the air. It's changed the atmosphere in the place, one of alarm, shock. I mean, I was just communicating with Charlie, I don't know, a few days back. He was a good friend. It doesn't seem real. And what we loved about Charlie was that he loved to engage debate, and he genuinely respected and genuinely loved, in a Christian manner, the people on the other side of the table. He didn't hate anybody.
Speaker Johnson also said at the end of the day, we have to remember that we are all Americans and that we should see ourselves as colleagues and fellow citizens and not as enemies.
Following the tragedy in Utah, vigils lit up around the United States. In Washington, D.C., a Capitol Hill church filled with candlelight. Hill staffers and young conservatives joined in mourning. NTD's Melina Weiskup has reactions. Melina, good morning. Tell us how Capitol Hill is responding to the killing of Charlie Kirk.
Hi, good morning, Steph. So both sides were quick to react, condemning political violence and calling for it to end. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that hatred has been fomented, fueling attacks like this. He said he thinks social media has been a toxin in politics and that we should see one another as colleagues and fellow citizens, as fellow countrymen, and not as enemies. And then you also had the Democrat House Leader Hakeem Jeffries. He sent a statement at around 5 p.m. yesterday, shortly after Kirk's death was announced, saying that he's shocked by the murder of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. Political violence of any kind and against any individual is unacceptable and completely incompatible with American values. We pray for his family during this tragedy. Here, I'll show you a short clip with various lawmakers from both sides of the aisle reacting to Charlie Kirk's death.
Time and time again, you cannot call people Nazis, fascists, and expect this type of stuff to not happen. Stop with the rhetoric. You're getting people killed. You're going to get one of us killed, too, while you continue doing it.
Enough of this. This is horrific. This is awful. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk risks an uncorking of political chaos and violence that we cannot risk in America. We cannot risk it.
It is unfortunately emblematic of how our politics is being conducted today.
This is just wrong. And my heart goes out to his family, to his friends. But we just cannot be a country that turns to violence when we disagree with people. We just can't.
My heart goes out to the whole Kirk family. We have seen this spike in political violence. We saw it in Minnesota. We saw it in Butler, Pennsylvania. It's got to stop. It's leading the country down a very dangerous path.
And the more we just have this sickness in society, the more we have to clamp down, and the more you have to have, security barriers and lock down our society because people are just sick.
I think after that, I think a lot of people will reflect upon things they said and did in that moment, and they probably regret it. Let's say this. I think there's a lot of people in the media who have said some things today that they probably regret. Let's use this for something positive and productive as we lift up in prayer Charlie's widow and young children and everybody involved in this.
And Melina, you've met and interacted with Charlie Kirk. How do you remember him?
Yeah, Steph, I last saw him a couple of years ago. He was an extremely intelligent person, very fearless about his beliefs politically and spiritually. I think that inspired a lot of young people and people more broadly across the country. On first interaction, you catch him as an open-minded person, forward-thinking. He had a genuine interest, to the speaker's point, of trying to help root out communist doctrine and ideology from our higher education system. That was one of his main focuses. And like the speaker said, he genuinely loved to debate, not out of ego, but when you interact with him, you get the sense that he had a genuine love for this country that motivated him. He felt like his ideas would help America see a better day and return to traditional values, and he wasn't shy about that. And while many remember his political activism, it's also important to note and remember, as many throughout the show have already done, his role as a father and as a husband, which deeply hits me as one with a young child and also a husband of my own. So I'm sure that touches many others' lives, and I send out my condolences to his wife Erica and 2 young children. Steph, back to you.
Yes, our hearts go out to his friends and family. Also, thank you so much, Melina.
And joining us now to discuss the tragic death of Charlie Kirk is Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the podcast Can We Please Talk? Also with us is Angie Wong, a Miami GOP committeewoman. Thank you both for joining us on 9/11 and, of course, this tragic morning. Mike, starting with you, on the eve of our nation's most somber day, 9/11, we're shocked by the shooting of Kirk, yet another fatal school shooting as well yesterday. How are you processing all of this?
Well, Carrie, geez, you just dumped a lot on me. First off, good morning. Angie, good to see you. I missed my internship down in the World Trade Center on 9/11. I was a rising junior at Rutgers University, so it's not lost on me what happened that day. I'm about to start crying, waking up to text messages and calls from my parents wondering if I was okay. So I'm going to leave that there right there so I don't get down the rabbit hole of that. Seeing the video yesterday of what happened with Charlie Kirk, a couple things came to mind for me, Carrie. First off, and Angie and I have done panels on other networks. Angie and I probably disagree on a bunch of different things. I would never wish violence on Angie or anybody else for that matter. I worked at Fox News for 3 years. I know what different viewpoints look like coming from a network perspective. So the political commentator in me started thinking about, just this person that, as Melina said earlier, has a family, has 2 little kids. You feel for the little kids that will grow up without a dad. But one thing that's kind of been resonating with me is this overarching question, which I'm sure we'll get into, and I'm sure Angie will get into in her response. How do we tone this down? Well, we can't tone it down if you don't look inward at times. And I'm not blaming Charlie Kirk. I'm talking about the people right now that have been quick to rush to their 5 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., or their YouTube channel to make a thumbnail and to make a video that pushes out content that continues to drive the divisiveness. If you don't look inward, if you don't stop before you upload that video, if you don't stop and say, is this adding to the discourse? You are just as bad as what happened yesterday. You could be responsible for some of what happened yesterday. And it's something that is not lost on me, Carrie. I'm a journalism graduate. I worked in television news. Everything I do is with intentionality to add to the discourse, to leave something behind for my girls to listen to at best. So I'm adding to the discourse and on television panels to be able to contribute. And I do that because I don't want to hop on trends. I don't want to do certain things about this movie's woke and that, and this is why this is being bad for you. And I think people need to realize that are creating content like that yesterday should be a reminder that when you continue to do things like that, it could lead to things like this, where now 2 little girls, or 2 kids, I should say, are growing up without a dad. And that is the worst part in all of this. We're losing our humanity in all of this. And I hope people start to reconsider the content that they're pushing out associated with all of this.
Looking inward, always good advice. Angie, your thoughts this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mike on a lot of things. And, we are on 2 different spectrums of the political circus here. So the great thing about Charlie Kirk is that he really lit up when he debated, and he loved talking to people no matter what side they stood on, mainly because he enjoyed debate. And you can see it in his eyes that his energy really came out when he was talking to people. And that was the infectious kind of glow that he had. Look, I am so sad to see that he has 2 really young kids, age 1 and 3, and they're going to be growing up in a world without their father. And his father was such a force of nature. The best thing that Charlie Kirk has left us, not just as a person, but with a platform that will continue to grow now, because this platform gave college students a voice at a time when they were being canceled. Conservatives were largely being canceled over the last couple of years, and this platform made it okay for them to be conservative and have conservative values. And I think that's going to carry forward. Clearly, as of yesterday, there's a lot of little Charlie Kirks were made after his death. So I think that this American Comeback Tour really stands up to its name, because I think now you've grown a lot of little conservatives amongst us. Only because nobody wants to get canceled, nobody wants to be silenced. I do think that Mike is correct. I think we need to have debate. We need to have healthy debate, and one that does not bring on violence. I would love to start those chats with the other side and see how we can come together to do this together.
Yeah, you certainly bring up the life and work of Kirk, and I want to come back to you on that in a minute. Mike, you initially started by the burden that the media, from network all the way down to social creators, bear in what has become just a very divisive climate. What are you hoping for out of political leaders? Obviously, many have already taken to Twitter or went on camera saying no room for political violence, but there's obviously something that incites the violence. And what are you hoping for to come positively from political leaders?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, Kerry, Herm Edwards, the former coach of the Jets, he used to do a rookie symposium in the NFL where the first thing he would start off with is don't hit send. Before you push send on that tweet, he's like, I'm going to make a button that will get people to not hit send on that tweet. Yesterday, as reporters were gathering around, and we saw in the package that played before we came on, Manu Raju and other Capitol Hill correspondents that I know, including ones at this network, all went out there to ask lawmakers, right, what they thought of all of this. And we just heard from Elizabeth Warren, we heard from Adam Schiff in that package, we heard from Chip Roy, all of them condemning it. But what you didn't hear yesterday, Kerry, was the first thing that Nancy Mace said was to blame Democrats for inciting this type of violence. Now, again, I ask you, look, can we point to different rhetoric from folks on the left in terms of things that they have said that are unsavory, to say the least? Of course. Could we do it for people on the right, for a network that I worked at prior once upon a time? Of course. You can do that with anything. But again, this inward look, right, as somebody who used to be a segment producer and then an associate producer, you make up the segment based on the way you want it to look and sound and what you disseminate to the public. My ask is that of independent media, of traditional media, whatever it is that you want to call it and put it under an umbrella, before you push that out, before you book said guests to incite this hateful argument that could lead to violence, before you craft something in the lower third or in the chyrons that could get somebody to watching in a waiting room going, is that really what's happening right now? Before you do all of that, have some intentionality before you push it out, because there are mass amounts of people that will see it. And I don't want to say the individual names here of people that have pushed it out. You can go on Twitter and X, or you can go on Threads and see all the different people that have been caught up in this. But one of the things that I try to do, and I've talked to my producer about this, Kerry, and he'll say, you got to do this because they're talking about it. I don't want to do it. I don't feel that way. If I don't feel that way, I'm not going to do that. To Angie's point, I think Charlie Kirk, again, feeling a certain way, being conservative, that's not the issue. He started Turning Point USA to get more people to drive out the vote for conservatives. That is something, is good in conservative space. But the content angle of this, right, for others that are still alive, that are still pushing out hateful, divisive content, everything from the thumbnail to the title of the caption to the guest you book and what they're going to say. We have to have some intentionality. If we're truly going to solve this, we're never going to solve it, Kerry. Let me just lead let me give the ending of the movie here. We're never going to solve it because people don't want to solve it. Even seeing a video like that yesterday, which shook me to my core as somebody who comes on television to talk about news and politics, we're not going to solve it because there are a few that think like me. There are a few that have intentionality to what they want to do. There are a few that want to tone it down the way that I want to do. And my hope is that it starts to resonate with people, because the president of the United States almost lost his life, and now Charlie Kirk has lost his life. And I hope that those images, those videos, seeing all of that starts to have an impact in the way people push out content.
Yes, intentionality. They say words are like water. Once you put them out, you can't take them back. And that quote from Herm Edwards, of course, very appropriate in pausing for a moment before you send something out. Angie, as we wind up, I'd like you to talk a little bit about Kirk's life. When you think about the youth, you think about the activism of the left, the Rock the Vote, and all these initiatives that really have won the youth mostly to more left causes. Charlie Kirk went into sort of the lion's den in a way, very bravely, and he sort of went against the trend and had success. And he even, went and interviewed or was interviewed by Gavin Newsom, and they had a very civil discourse. So I'd like you, as we finish up, just to leave us with some thoughts about Kirk's example.
Yeah, and he was a hero of the conservative movement, and what a movement it was. He was going into college campuses when it wasn't popular to be a conservative. I remember walking through college campuses You could wear a red hat, even. It didn't have to say anything. They just didn't allow. There was no tolerance for a red hat. That's how divided we've become. And Charlie Kirk, he's got to pave the way to say it's okay to do this. And even if it is hard, even if it is challenging, I mean, those are miracles, I think. Those are not just setting examples for the youth. That's really paving the way to just think differently. And whether you're a conservative or anything else, you should be able to express yourself freely and not get hurt by it just because someone doesn't like the color of your hat. And so I think he's given so much hope to young people and across the nation. Anyone he spoke to, anyone who's ever met him will tell you that he's the nicest guy in the world. I mean, he's super helpful. He will make time for you whenever he can, and he loves to just talk to people. So I think that's one of the biggest things you can do as a leader. I'm certain that if he was still around with us, that he would have done amazing things in our government. And, I think back to, your earlier point of how do we tone this down? I'm not sure we can. We have a problem with social media because of clickbait. And the more violent the videos are, the more eyeballs it gets. And that's, the weird algorithm that we're all on this like treadmill trying to get as many likes and admiration on social media. I think that has to be looked at. I've certainly spoken to 2 congressional members yesterday to discuss how do we move forward from this, because silent prayers equals silent action. We actually need to do something together. I would like to get my head together, especially here with Mike, and decide how are we going to do this. Maybe we need to be the way forward to say, look, we disagree, but we're going to be able to talk. We're not silencing each other. Let's start talking.
Well, Mike Leon, Angie Wong, both in Florida, your words bring us comfort on this dark morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
And coming up, on today's 24th anniversary of the tragic events of September 11th, memorial events will be taking place across the country, including in Pennsylvania, at the Pentagon, and in New York City. We'll have that coverage next.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness, capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjian Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. and there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
Welcome back. You're watching NTD Good Morning. We'll be covering the 24th memorial of the 9/11 attacks.
Memorial events will be taking place across the country, including Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, and here in New York City.
President Trump is expected to make an address today at the Pentagon in honor of the nearly 3,000 people who lost their lives that day.
Many more lost their lives following the attack. The total post-9/11 losses has exceeded 400 ahead of the FDNY engraving, 39 newly fallen members.
And here in New York, the 9/11 Memorial and Museum will be holding its 24th annual remembrance ceremony today.
Families, survivors, and leaders will all gather to honor the nearly 3,000 lives lost with moments of silence and the reading of all of the victims' names.
We'll be covering the memorial all day, so stay tuned for that.
That's right. And we're going to head now live to NTD National correspondent Kevin Hogan. He's at the 9/11 Memorial site right now. Good morning, Kevin. What's going on there right now?
Good morning, Carrie. Yes, I'm in Lower Manhattan, just outside of the 9/11 Memorial, where thousands of people are expected to come out today to commemorate those who lost their lives in this tragedy. At 8:30 a.m., the private ceremony will begin, which will include family members and guests reading the names of the roughly 3,000 people who lost their lives in the 9/11 terrorist attack and the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. The ceremony will begin with the drum procession, followed by the Star-Spangled Banner. And as the names are read, there will be 6 moments of silence, of course, for those fateful moments on that day when the towers were struck, when the towers fell, when the Pentagon was struck, and when United Flight 93 crashed in an open field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. After the reading of names is finished, taps will be performed, thus concluding the ceremony, and then that'll be around 1:30 this afternoon, and then the Memorial and Museum will be open to the public. And the mood in New York City right now is that even though 9/11 was 24 years ago, it still feels fresh and raw, to use their words for it. And I spoke to a woman who lost her cousin that day. Her cousin had a 9-month-old baby. She asked the question, what is the way to move on from a tragedy like this? When she thinks about the people who woke up that morning and said goodbye to their loved ones and then perished in the terrorist attacks. And Carrie, there are many reasons to today's commemoration. One of them is to never forget. Back to you.
Thanks for that report, Kevin. We'll be staying with you all morning. We'll be talking to you soon. Thank you. And today marks 24 years since the September 11th attacks, a moment that reshaped America's sense of security and its role in the world. In the decades since, the United States has fought wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, dismantled terrorist networks, and restructured its homeland security system. But despite those efforts, new threats have emerged. We welcome Kyle Scheidler, Homeland Security and Counterterrorist Analyst for the Center for Security Policy. Thank you for joining us this morning, Kyle. It's good to see you. Looking back 25 years after 9/11, what fundamentally has the U.S. learned from that day, or have we actually repeated many of the same mistakes that led up to 9/11?
Well, unfortunately, I think we haven't learned very much. After 25 years, 20 of them in Afghanistan, we've allowed the Taliban to return to power there. Al-Qaeda continues to operate in Afghanistan, although with a lower profile than they used to. Al-Qaeda is very active across the African continent, which is where they got their start in the 1998 African embassy bombings. We're still targeting Al-Qaeda in Somalia with its proxy Al-Shabaab there. So in many ways, the battlefield actually hasn't at all changed that much in 25 years. You have the disadvantage now of you have an al-Qaeda-linked leader in charge of Syria following the Syrian civil war, so that's a step backwards. In Europe, the situation is worse than it was before 9/11, with Islamist radicals gaining ground in Europe much stronger than they were in the days when 9/11 hijacker Mohammed Atta was residing in Hamburg, Germany. Here in the United States, Islamist networks are stronger and more active than they were before 9/11. We've seen this in the results of protests on college campuses, their ability to indoctrinate, recruit, and send funding to jihadists remains strong. So unfortunately, we've not taken a lot of steps forward. One place where we are seeing positive work is from the Trump administration on immigration and border security. After 9/11, it became very apparent how important immigration enforcement was, both internal immigration enforcement and also border security. And that message was lost in the days and years following 9/11, but the Trump administration has seemed to pick it back up. And they've realized that allowing these radical spaces within which terrorists can move and hide is simply not acceptable, and you have to remove them at large scale. And so we're seeing them do that. So that's a positive step. But overall, I'd say in 25 years, we've not really advanced all that far.
Yes, and you mentioned all the various resurgence potentially of Islamic terrorist organizers, and I believe I misspoke earlier. Of course, it's been 24 years. I was actually 24, living on 24th Street, watching on that tragic day. Leading up to that day, Kyle, it seemed as if radicalization in Europe was on the rise and potentially something that we're seeing today. How is that contributing to potentially, in your view, an unpreparedness for Islamic terror?
Well, in the days before 9/11, we were concerned about Islamists residing in Europe, traveling to Europe, and then to the United States, but mostly coming from the Middle East. Nowadays, Europe is a net exporter of Islamic radicalism. There are individuals and cells and networks that operate in Europe that would have been long ago shut down by any Middle Eastern government in the regions. And similarly in the United States, actually, we in many ways, the United States has become a net exporter of Islamic radicalism to the point where we have governments like the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis who look at our policies and say, what are you guys doing? You're making this worse, which is ironically the very things we were telling them after 9/11. But in some ways, they have improved their understanding. They have realized the threat that this represents to them. And so they've taken strong action. And in many ways, they have now advanced beyond what we are doing when it comes to addressing Islamic radicals in their societies.
Yeah, and you mentioned the radicalization networks that are operating largely unchecked. Where do you see these networks active today, and why have they been so difficult to disrupt?
Well, immediately after 9/11, federal law enforcement began looking very seriously at some of these networks, most of which have some ties to Islamist political groups. Most notably, the name everybody knows is the Muslim Brotherhood. There are other groups, but the Muslim Brotherhood is the one that most people recognize the name of, and they're sort of the leading group when it comes to this. And they have ties to terror finance. They have ties to recruiting and indoctrinating people to send them to fight jihad abroad. And we began making arrests. Most famously was the Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest trial against an Islamic charity for fundraising for terrorism in United States history. But that was sort of one and done. We began an effort in this space, and then we stopped. And I think part of the reason we stopped was the federal government recognized just how large of a problem this was. The level of strength of control that groups like the Muslim Brotherhood have in American mosques. And they recognized that they had a problem where it would appear as though they were targeting all American Muslims, when that, in fact, was not the goal. But because of the Brotherhood's strength in the American Muslim community, they were concerned that that would come to be what they were being accused of. And in fact, they were accused of. And so they sort of largely shut down. You saw an effort to distinguish between political Islamists and jihadist terrorists, when that distinction is far hazier. This led us in 2013 to the promotion of the Arab Spring, where the Obama administration government promoted Islamist groups like the Muslim Brotherhood all throughout Middle East and North Africa as what they thought would be a bulwark against groups like Al-Qaeda. But in fact, it actually led to a resurgence of Al-Qaeda because, of course, these political groups, these political Islamists, are the wellspring from which jihadist terror groups arise.
And Kyle, as we begin to finish up, obviously here 9/11, a somber day where we reflect on security, the role of terror and how it's changed from the 80s and 90s, where it was really Cold War climate, to now sort of a more asymmetrical view of our enemies. What is the most important things that you think need to be done or should continue to be done to protect Americans against terror?
Well, one bright note is that in the U.S.'s war on terrorism, we have killed or jailed a large number of sort of high-level terrorist thinkers and leaders, guys like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. These guys really were top of their class when it came to terrorism. And the quality of terrorism leadership today is not the same. And so what we see is a lot more individual attacks, inspired attacks through social media, truck rammings, shootings. And these things, of course, are dangerous and they lead to deaths, but they aren't on the scale of the kind of attack that we saw on 9/11. So I think we can take some credit for that. But in response to that, we need to be pushing our counterterrorism down to the local and state level. These are the guys who are going to have to respond to active shooters, to truck and vehicle rammings, those kinds of things. So we need far better counterterrorism training at the local and state level. We need to direct our local and state, local law enforcement to take the lead when it comes to dealing with these types of terrorism.
We appreciate you sharing your insights with us here on this 9/11 morning. Kyle Schadler, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
And when two longtime friends set out to encourage people to take part in volunteer and service projects on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, their goal was simple.
They wanted to turn a day of unimaginable tragedy into a day for doing good.
As the nation prepares to mark the 24th anniversary of 9/11, that mission has evolved into a national day of service where people across the country participate in projects that honor the nearly 3,000 dead.
I think one of the inspirations clearly for this experience, 9/11 Day, was the way our nation was right after the 9/11 attacks. You know, when we weren't red states and blue states, we were just human beings helping one another. And for me, that was like the eye-opening moment, I guess, when I realized that we're not nearly as divided as we think we are.
The nationwide effort kicked off yesterday as thousands of volunteers began assembling packaged meals for needy New Yorkers in a festive atmosphere aboard the USS Intrepid. They filled small plastic bags with various ingredients for making a kind of jambalaya, including uncooked rice, dehydrated vegetables, lentils, salt, and other seasonings.
It's very important to remember what happened on this day and also the fact that the world came together on this day. And I think that's why we do this day as a day of volunteering and giving, because it's become a day where the world has come together.
The two-day event aims to package more than 2 million meals for local food banks. It is among 25 large-scale volunteer service projects being organized in some 24 cities across the country, including Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Seattle.
I could think of no better way to honor my dad than to be here volunteering today. If he were here today, this is something that he would be doing, and so us to be here in his name is just really special to all of us.
Besides meal packing, volunteers will be taking part in food and clothing drives, park and neighborhood cleanups, blood banks, and other community events. The organization says even smaller acts of kindness count, like greeting strangers on the street or holding the door for someone.
And the annual Tunnel to Towers 5K run and walk is coming up. It follows the footsteps of firefighter Stephen Siller, who carried 60 pounds of gear through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel and ultimately gave his life to save others at the Twin Towers.
And the event happens on the last Sunday of September every year to raise funds for first responders and veterans. And Steph here, along with Tiffany Meyer, and one of our producers, who's a vet himself, will be there talking with folks and putting in those steps for our country's many heroes.
Keep you updated there. Still to come, how voices across the political spectrum are reacting to the news of Charlie Kirk's death and calling for an end to political violence.
And we're going to take a look at the legacy, of course, that Kirk leaves behind. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. How did I get here?
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
We said we'd never give in to a meltdown.
Okay.
We'd never babysit with a screen. We said we'd never let the toys take over.
Mariella!
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight. Skylar, come here. Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. Utah residents paid tribute to conservative activist Charlie Kirk at a makeshift vigil yesterday.
They paid their respects outside the hospital he was brought to after being fatally shot.
The crowd outside Timpanogos Regional Hospital lined the road, holding American flags as passing cars honked their horns.
I was 4 people in front of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was one of my greatest heroes and I looked up to him a lot, a role model. He was a role model of mine.
He was very opinionated, obviously, but I just liked his interviews that he would have with students and talk to them. But I think he represented the best of what's in our country in regards to freedom of speech, being able to speak and speak your mind, those types of things.
Visitors placed lit candles, bouquets of flowers, and small American flags in front of a large hospital sign.
We were pacing back and forth in our home, and we just wanted to come out here and be a part of the community and show support and lift up some prayers for Charlie and his family.
The flags outside Turning Point USA's Phoenix headquarters have been lowered to half staff. Bouquets of flowers delivered by well-wishers are piling up in one of the main entrances at Turning Point's campus.
It's a devastating loss, a huge loss, tragic loss. He was a father, young family, so it's very sad on that part.
If you are a lover of liberty and free speech and conservative values, he was one of ours. He was a champion of everything we believe, so it's a devastating day.
Mourners gathered at a vigil for Kirk in Scottsdale, Arizona, and at the Utah State Capitol yesterday. A candlelight vigil and prayer event was also held in Seattle, Washington. And before their game, the New York Yankees held a moment of silence in honor of Kirk.
And now we take a closer look at the life and rise of Charlie Kirk.
From launching Turning Point USA as a teen, he became one of Donald Trump's closest allies. He quickly emerged as the face of a new generation of Republicans. Here's how Kirk rose to prominence and the legacy he leaves behind.
Charlie Kirk rose from a teenager with a passion for politics to one of the most recognizable conservative voices of his generation. He first made headlines in 2012 when an essay on liberal bias in schools went viral, with the 18-year-old appearing on Fox News for the first time. Later that year, Kirk founded Turning Point USA, an organization aimed at promoting conservative values on college campuses. It quickly grew into a nationwide network, giving young conservatives a platform they hadn't had before. Kirk's passion for confronting liberals on college campuses attracted powerful conservative donors. He continued debating liberal academics right up to the end.
No, you let me talk. Well, you keep telling me not to interrupt you. I'm not interrupting you.
That's what you think they do. I'm going to add some context to what you're saying.
As Turning Point grew, so did Kirk's relationship with Donald Trump. By 2024, Turning Point's political arm was helping lead Trump's Get Out the Vote effort in swing states. Kirk also built a platform of his own through his radio show and podcast. Kirk was famous for his speeches where he mixed politics with faith, once declaring America was locked in a spiritual battle. Kirk was able to hit at the heart of what young conservative voters want. In an interview with the Epoch Times, he highlighted the impact of social media and bridging the gap between older and younger voters.
They want a government that they can trust. I think President Trump is delivering on all these things. I mean, we got to lower interest rates. We got to build more homes. Honestly, more immediately, we need mass deportations. We need them very quickly. And I also think we got to clarify this Epstein stuff. This last week has not helped the cause, especially amongst lower propensity younger voters, especially young male voters.
By the time of his death at just 31, many would say Kirk had become synonymous with the MAGA youth movement. Turning Point USA now has chapters on over 800 college campuses. Charlie Kirk is survived by his wife Erica and their 2 young children.
The House of Representatives held a moment of silence yesterday for Charlie Kirk, and members of Congress responded to the news of his death.
NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has their reactions.
It's awful. It's absolutely awful. I'm sorry for his family. There's no room for political violence in our country, and we all can do more to just condemn it, and hopefully that's the antidote to it. But it's awful, period.
Terrific. I think I pray for him and his wife and their 2 kids. I talked to him the night we passed the big beautiful bill, or the morning, I guess, and he called me on the phone. I was on the House floor, but I'm really disgusted with the national media right now, more so than usual. I mean, they're speculating that somebody shot a gun in celebration. MSNBC, they ought to fire every one of those folks, and they ought to boycott the companies that advertise with them. That's just disgusting. There's no place for that.
Yeah, it's a horrible tragedy, right? Political violence is unacceptable in America. It doesn't matter your political affiliation or your background. None of this is okay. right? We need to be safe. We need to be secure. We need to be settling our issues at the ballot box and with dialogue. And sometimes that's tough, fierce dialogue. But in no instance is it okay. And everybody should be condemning this.
Regarding the political environment, and also, what message do you have to your fellow lawmakers regarding the political environment and the rhetoric that has been put out in the media?
You know, beyond rhetoric, we need to talk about action, and we need to talk about, yes, there are words, but most importantly, we are in a job of leadership. We are in a job of action. We are in a role and a position where the American people are looking to us to do something about this.
We turn now to a school shooting in Colorado. Authorities say a student opened fire at Evergreen High School near Denver, shooting 2 classmates before turning the gun on himself. The gunfire broke out just after noon yesterday, both inside and outside the building. Deputies say law enforcement found the shooter within minutes and no officers fired their weapons. 2 students were rushed to the hospital, one with critical injuries. Parents and students were reunited at a nearby elementary school, with some teens sheltering in neighborhood homes.
Keep you updated on that tragedy, too. Coming up, an interview with one of the 2 fighter pilots sent to locate the 4th hijacked passenger jet that appeared to be heading for the Capitol.
She shares her story and experience of how the day went down.
Watch what peanut butter does to our body.
Celery with peanut butter. Peanut butter is one of the worst foods that you could eat. It's loaded with lectins and really has no health benefits. They could have chosen almond butter from peeled almonds, and that would probably save this.
Cashews.
Cashews are not a nut. They're actually part of the poison ivy family.
No way.
Yeah, they cause burns in your gut and can actually cause skin problems.
What about walnuts?
Walnuts actually have the same fat that's in avocados. And human studies show that if you eat 1 avocado a day, you'll actually lose weight. So good fat makes you lose weight.
Oatmeal?
Oh, not oatmeal.
Oats are basically pure sugar. Oatmeal is good for one thing, and that's for fattening horses for the winter. Remember, breakfast is break fast. Lots of human and animal studies have shown the longer you delay eating breakfast, the more ketones and weight loss you will achieve. If you're eventually going to have break fast, look for fat-based sources like an avocado or omega-3 egg.
Low-fat anything? Stay away. Companies market low-fat options as healthier, but just look at the label. These things are full of added sugars to make up for the flavor loss when they processed out all those natural fats. The truth is, fat isn't the enemy at all. Heard of the keto diet? It's all about eating the right fats to trick your body into max burning stored fat to slim down quickly. Of course, it's nearly impossible to stick. And here's the rub. Even if you followed it perfectly, it still won't work the same way for everyone. Everyone's body processes fat differently. It all depends on your unique metabolic type. Now think about it. Why can some people eat nearly anything and not gain a pound, while others gain and lose weight like a yo-yo? Why do some people accumulate fat right around their bellies, while others store it around their butt and thighs? It's all tied to your metabolic type. That's also why some of us who think we're eating and living healthy often still struggle with stubborn extra pounds. Heck, I was one of them. For years, I was 70 pounds overweight, even though I felt like all I ever ate was salad. Now I know I was doing all the wrong things for my metabolic type. And once you know your metabolic type, you can get keto diet slimming power without the restrictive diet. All it takes is adding the right specific fat type to your diet to flip the switch on your body's fat burning power. If you want to find out your type, I put together a short quiz where you can find out. You don't need to put in your email or anything like that. Just answer a few simple questions and I'll share your results right away. So you'll possess the hidden key to your unique weight management strategy instantly. In fact, once you unlock your metabolic profile, I'll also show you exactly how to tweak one tiny thing about your diet to help you slim down in record time. Just take the quiz to get started.
Scan now to access your free quiz.
Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. The country is mourning as the killer of conservative activist Charlie Kirk is still on the run. President Trump says it's a dark moment for America. What we know so far.
And President Trump also called Charlie Kirk a champion of young conservatives. How voices from across the political spectrum are reacting to Kirk's killing and condemning political violence. Plus, we take a look at the meteoric rise of the young conservative and the legacy Kirk leaves behind.
And today's 24th anniversary of the tragic events of September 11th. Memorial events will be taking place across the country, including Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, and New York City. We'll have that coverage coming up.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Today is Thursday, September 11th. You're watching NTD Good Morning.
Today, of course, an important and solemn day to remember those who lost their lives today, 24 years ago. We're going to have more coverage on that. But coming up first, we start with the devastating news of Charlie Kirk's death. The country in mourning for him. He was killed yesterday in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination. The suspect still on the run. Kirk was shot in the neck while taking questions at a Utah Valley University event where the suspect remains at large.
The 31-year-old was a high-profile conservative voice, especially for younger generations. Many of us at NTD have personally met and interviewed Charlie on several occasions. He was always kind and extremely generous with his time and gave very thoughtful and respectful answers to the questions given to him. Charlie was a friend of President Trump and his sons, Donald Jr. and Eric.
Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA when he was just 18 years old to bridge the divide between conservative students and the liberal majority opinions that are on most college campuses. And he was especially famous for taking questions from students about topics ranging from climate change to faith and family values.
Turning Point USA writes, "It is with a heavy heart that we confirm that Charlie James Kirk has been murdered by a gunshot. Charlie leaves behind his wife, Erica, and 2 young children. He will be missed." And reactions are pouring in after Charlie Kirk's assassination.
President Trump and other leaders are honoring Kirk's life, condemning political violence behind his death, and there's a call for unity.
President Trump called Kirk's killing heinous, praising him as a patriot, a man of deep faith, and a champion for young conservatives.
Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God. Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
The White House quickly moved to honor Kirk. President Trump ordered all U.S. flags to fly at half-staff until September 14th. Trump also posted on Truth Social calling Kirk a truly great American patriot, writing that no one understood the hearts of America's youth better. Trump also promised to find and punish those responsible.
My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
First Lady Melania Trump reflected on the personal cost to Kirk's young children, saying their lives will now be filled with stories instead of memories, and photographs instead of laughter. Kirk is survived by his wife, Erica, and 2 children, aged 1 and 3 years old. Donald Trump Jr. described Kirk as more than a friend, calling him a brother and one of the most courageous and principled men he had ever known. Secretary of State Marco Rubio joined the chorus of grief, saying Kirk's commitment to America's future will resonate for decades to come. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth prayed for Kirk along with American service members in Washington.
The only assurance I can take is that I know he is with his Lord and Savior right now. He has heard the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt credited Kirk with encouraging young conservatives like her to step into public life. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. mourned Kirk as a defender of free speech. Reactions came from across the political spectrum. Former President Biden said he is praying for Kirk's family. He called for an end to political violence, saying there is no place for it in America. Former Vice President Kamala Harris condemned the act, encouraging all Americans to work together to ensure this doesn't lead to more violence. Former President Obama weighed in as well, saying this kind of violence has no place in our democracy. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers paused for a moment of silence on the House floor to honor Charlie Kirk. But the solemn tribute quickly gave way to shouting from some members. House Speaker Mike Johnson told CNN the news of Kirk's shooting created a highly charged environment in the room.
Something happened on Capitol Hill today. We were talking right before we came on the air. It's changed the atmosphere in the place, one of alarm, shock. I mean, I was just communicating with Charlie, I don't know, a few days back. He was a good friend. It doesn't seem real. And what we loved about Charlie was that he loved to engage debate, and he genuinely respected and genuinely loved, in a Christian manner, the people on the other side of the table. He didn't hate anybody.
Speaker Johnson also said at the end of the day, we have to remember that we are all Americans and that we should see ourselves as colleagues and fellow citizens and not as enemies.
Following the tragedy in Utah, vigils lit up around the United States. In Washington, D.C., a Capitol Hill church filled with candlelight. Hill staffers and young conservatives joined in mourning. NTD's Melina Weiskup has reactions. Melina, good morning. Tell us how Capitol Hill is responding to the killing of Charlie Kirk.
Hi, good morning, Steph. So both sides were quick to react, condemning political violence and calling for it to end. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that hatred has been fomented, fueling attacks like this. He said he thinks social media has been a toxin in politics and that we should see one another as colleagues and fellow citizens, as fellow countrymen, and not as enemies. And then you also had the Democrat House Leader Hakeem Jeffries. He sent a statement at around 5 p.m. yesterday, shortly after Kirk's death was announced, saying that he's shocked by the murder of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. Political violence of any kind and against any individual is unacceptable and completely incompatible with American values. We pray for his family during this tragedy. Here, I'll show you a short clip with various lawmakers from both sides of the aisle reacting to Charlie Kirk's death.
Time and time again, you cannot call people Nazis, fascists, and expect this type of stuff to not happen. Stop with the rhetoric. You're getting people killed. You're going to get one of us killed, too, while you continue doing it.
Enough of this. This is horrific. This is awful. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk risks an uncorking of political chaos and violence that we cannot risk in America. We cannot risk it.
It is unfortunately emblematic of how our politics is being conducted today.
This is just wrong. And my heart goes out to his family, to his friends. But we just cannot be a country that turns to violence when we disagree with people. We just can't.
My heart goes out to the whole Kirk family. We have seen this spike in political violence. We saw it in Minnesota. We saw it in Butler, Pennsylvania. It's got to stop. It's leading the country down a very dangerous path.
And the more we just have this sickness in society, the more we have to clamp down, and the more you have to have, security barriers and lock down our society because people are just sick.
I think after that, I think a lot of people will reflect upon things they said and did in that moment, and they probably regret it. Let's say this. I think there's a lot of people in the media who have said some things today that they probably regret. Let's use this for something positive and productive as we lift up in prayer Charlie's widow and young children and everybody involved in this.
And Melina, you've met and interacted with Charlie Kirk. How do you remember him?
Yeah, Steph, I last saw him a couple of years ago. He was an extremely intelligent person, very fearless about his beliefs politically and spiritually. I think that inspired a lot of young people and people more broadly across the country. On first interaction, you catch him as an open-minded person, forward-thinking. He had a genuine interest, to the speaker's point, of trying to help root out communist doctrine and ideology from our higher education system. That was one of his main focuses. And like the speaker said, he genuinely loved to debate, not out of ego, ago, but when you interact with him, you get the sense that he had a genuine love for this country that motivated him. He felt like his ideas would help America see a better day and return to traditional values, and he wasn't shy about that. And while many remember his political activism, it's also important to note and remember, as many throughout the show have already done, his role as a father and as a husband, which deeply hits me as one with a young child and also a husband of my own. So I'm sure that touches many others' lives, and I send out my condolences to his wife Erica and two young children. Steph, back to you.
Yes, our hearts go out to his friends and family. Also, thank you so much, Melina.
And we continue to stay on the tragic death of Charlie Kirk, as well as 9/11 and the reflections of the state of the world today. Joining us now to discuss that is Mike Sorelli. He's Chief Talent Officer of Overwatch Mission Critical, as well as a Navy SEAL, retired and frequent speaker on leadership. Mike, thank you for joining us on this somber morning. It's chilling that on 9/11 the nation was shocked, and of course now, this morning, we're shocked by the tragic death of Charlie Kirk. Perhaps the connected thread on these two events is this ideological extremism and this attention economy that rewards extremism. How do we return to a more moderate and centrist connected society from where we have been and where we are today?
And that's the million-dollar question. I'm going to go back to 9/11 first. One of my condolences to all the families that lost their loved ones, the 3,000 Americans we lost. Some things come to memory. One, that for my generation, things were never going to be the same. We didn't think the war was going to be that long, but it was, and it impacted us. But we were happy to do it for revenge, for vengeance, on behalf of those we lost. I remember things like the Palestinians in masses celebrating in the streets on September 11th. And that just, I was dumbfounded by that people could take such joy in the death of other people. And now we return here to Charlie Kirk, and you see that by some on the left, which is just utterly disgusting. The other thing I remember about September 11th is no matter what side of the aisle you sat on, at that moment for months, we came together, not as Republicans or Democrats, but as Americans. And we need to return to that. Political violence, or violence of any kind, against those that disagree with you, unless they brought violence to your door, is completely unacceptable. And you are right. We are at war from within, and it almost feels, I'll say I have a little more of an allergic reaction to this extremism from within compared to Islamic extremism. It's a sad state for our nation, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail, but this needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed decisively.
Mike, you bring up so many important points there. In fact, the founding of NTD and the Epoch Times was for the same thing that you referenced, with Palestinians that were celebrating the attack on America. In Chinese media, they were celebrating in Mandarin, but in English, they were saying how sorry they were for the U.S. diplomatically, and thus the Epoch Times and NTD were formed. Now, I want to take you back to the 70s and 80s. When you think of those days, it was about air raids in schools, preparing for a Cold War environment. And then that kind of dissipated in the 90s. And then, of course, with 9/11, we entered a new era in terms of security. Crime rates domestically are down from those days, but there's this sense that maybe we are less safe today. Are we less safe today in your view?
I had this conversation with my wife. We have an 11-month-old little girl, and I fear no man, given my past and my brethren. But now I'm fearful to send my daughter to school. I'm fearful to let my daughter, when she's of age, 2 years from now or 3 years from now, ride her bike 2 blocks to the playground. That is not the state we should be living in. And when it comes to crime, what we saw President Trump do in D.C. is the right answer, because we disagree with the left on this, on no cash bail, on softer policies. And you see what just happened in Charlotte to that young Ukrainian woman. This is becoming a lawless society. Chicago is a perfect example of what not to do. And we need to abide by our laws. We need to enforce our laws to the fullest extent. If somebody is a violent criminal, they don't get a second chance. We remove them for the safety of the millions of Americans that could be in their path. And that needs to be addressed It is a problem where Americans don't feel safe anymore. And I'm in Texas, guys. When I left the SEAL teams, I didn't want to carry a gun. Now I don't leave the house without my handgun because we have constitutional carry in Texas out of fear that I can't account for what people that are mentally ill will do, that people that have no regard for the law will do. And it is a vastly different time from when I grew up in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s.
Yeah, it's so interesting how I can remember Times Square in the 80s and the 90s being completely unsafe and seedy. And it seems like the crime that you see, the petty crime, is gone. But with cameras around every corner, the visual shock of seeing what happened yesterday, and as you point out, the visual shock of seeing that Ukrainian refugee stabbed. My son approached me last night before I went to bed, and he said that he had seen the video of Charlie Kirk. You mentioned your daughter and how you have this fear. You fear no man, being an ex-SEAL, but that you fear for your children. But as FDR said, the only thing we have to fear is the fear itself. So what can we do as a society, being that we're living in these times where there really is violence visually all around us?
Well, the last thing, and I think you can agree as a father, is we don't want our children to grow up in fear of the world. That's just no place. And it results in a horrible life when you live in fear. It comes back to the law. And it comes back to, again, I'm not trying to pick on the left here, but they played this beautifully through lawfare, taking over district attorneys' offices, taking over education boards. And this is the result. This is the outcome. Bad leadership usually puts out bad policies that result in bad outcomes. And crime, and especially our urban cities, is through the roof. It's unacceptable. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, loved San Francisco. It was one of the most beautiful, fun places to grow up in the 80s and 90s. And now I avoid it because of horrid policies that allow for social deviancy. And with social media, I think you said it earlier, it's like social media now bolsters or celebrates people, committing crimes. The disgust I have by seeing some of the reactions to Charlie Kirk's death from the radical left, I'm shocked that anyone could celebrate the death of a human being, another American, a fellow American, who simply has opposing points of view. And that is a sad commentary for our nation. We've got to go back to the laws. We have to enforce them. I do believe in second chances. But if it is a wildly violent crime, you've got to protect society and lock that person away for the full extent of the law.
And Mike, as we finish up, you're one of the nation's foremost leadership coaches and trainers and speakers. We're all leaders in our respective workplaces, schools, communities. What encouragement can you offer people to find some positivity or to begin the healing process that really has to happen society at large?
Yeah, I think that comes down to just positivity and gratitude. At the end of the day, and given our problems, we are still the best nation in the world. We live in a great country. We have to have faith in fellow men. But when it comes to leadership, I'm a strong believer that one of the strongest components of leadership is love for your fellow man. But also with that, the highest form of love is accountability. And it goes back to holding people accountable for the actions that they take, no matter where they started, no matter mental health, that if somebody commits a violent crime, you hold them accountable and you let everyone else see it, that this is the result of your actions. Everyone has faculty over their decisions. And we need more people to understand that. And just violence in any manner against any person, especially the innocent, is unacceptable.
We appreciate you sharing your experience and your leadership advice and how it can help us heal as a nation. Speak to you soon. Mike Sorelli, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up on today's 24th anniversary of the tragic events of September 11th, memorial events will be taking place across the country, including Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, and New York City. We'll have that coverage next.
Watch what peanut butter does to our body.
Celery with peanut butter. Peanut butter is one of the worst foods that you could eat. It's loaded with lectins and really has no health benefits. They could have chosen almond butter from peeled almonds, and that would probably save this.
Cashews.
Cashews are not a nut. They're actually part of the poison ivy family.
No way.
Yeah, they cause burns in your gut and can actually cause skin problems.
What about walnuts?
Walnuts actually have the same fat that's in avocados. And human studies show that if you eat one avocado a day, you'll actually lose weight. So good fat makes you lose weight.
Oatmeal.
Oh, not oatmeal.
Oats are basically pure sugar. Oatmeal is good for one thing, and that's for fattening horses for the winter. Remember, breakfast is break fast. Lots of human and animal studies have shown the longer you delay eating breakfast, the more ketones and weight loss you will achieve. If you're eventually going to have break fast, look for fat-based sources like an avocado or omega-3 egg.
Low fat anything? Stay away. Companies market low fat options as healthier, but just look at the label. These things are full of added sugars to make up for the flavor loss when they processed out all those natural fats. The truth is, fat isn't the enemy at all. Heard of the keto diet? It's all about eating the right fats to trick your body into max burning stored fat to slim down quickly. Of course, it's nearly impossible to stick. And here's the rub. Even if you followed it perfectly, it still won't work the same way for everyone. Everyone's body processes fat differently. It all depends on your unique metabolic type. Now think about it. Why can some people eat nearly anything and not gain a pound, while others gain and lose weight like a yo-yo? Why do some people accumulate fat right around their bellies, while others store it around their butt and thighs? It's all tied to your metabolic type. That's also why some of us who think we're eating and living healthy often still struggle with stubborn extra pounds. Heck, I was one of them. For years, I was 70 pounds overweight, even though I felt like all I ever ate was salad. Now I know I was doing all the wrong things for my metabolic type. And once you know your metabolic type, you can get keto diet slimming power without the restrictive diet. All it takes is adding the right specific fat type to your diet to flip the switch on your body's fat burning power. If you want to find out your type, I put together a short quiz where you can find out. You don't need to put in your email or anything like that. Just answer a few simple questions and I'll share your results right away. So you'll possess the hidden key to your unique weight management strategy instantly. In fact, once you unlock your metabolic profile, I'll also show you exactly how to tweak one tiny thing about your diet to help you slim down in record time. Just take the quiz to get started.
Scan now to access your free quiz.
Welcome back. You are watching NTD Good Morning. We'll be covering the 24th memorial of the 9/11 attacks.
Memorial events will be taking place across the country, including Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, and New York City.
President Trump is expected to make an address today at the Pentagon in honor of the nearly 3,000 people who lost their lives that day.
And President Trump and First Lady Melania about to attend the Pentagon service commemorating the September 11th attacks. We now go live to NTD's Mari Otsu at the White House. Good morning, Mari. It's good to see you. What's the mood there, and what can you tell us about the president's schedule for today?
Good morning to you too, Carrie. The mood here at the White House is still subdued and somber, just as it was last night after President Trump broke the news announcing that Charlie Kirk was dead. The president then signed a proclamation ordering that all flags, including the White House ones and ones across the nation, fly at half-mast until Sunday evening in honor of Charlie Kirk. And I'm sure we're going to hear more from the president today about Kirk. But he released a tribute video last night expressing his grief, but also saying that Kirk's love of America and legacy will live on. And near the top of this hour, President Trump and First Lady Melania will be attending the Patriot Day memorial ceremony at the Pentagon. Patriot Day honors the memory of the nearly 3,000 victims who lost their lives in the terrorist attacks at the Pentagon, the World Trade Center, and in Pennsylvania on September 11, 2001. The ceremonies also recognize the bravery of service members and first responders who served in the wake of the attacks. Now, President Trump, on the morning of the attacks in 2001, he was then a real estate developer at the time, says he was in a building in Midtown Manhattan when he saw the second plane hit the World Trade Center with his own eyes. He adds that soon after witnessing the attacks, he went down to Ground Zero to help out. Let's listen to what the president said in an interview just hours after these attacks in 2001. Look.
The fact is something has changed very dramatically. And I think one of the very sad things is going to be when you look at the skyline of New York, which has become so emblazoned in your own memory, and you look at the skyline of New York and you see these buildings, these two buildings, whether you love them or don't love them, they were a great part of the skyline. And then when you look at the skyline after 2001, and you're going to see a skyline without these two buildings, you're going to say, what happened? People won't believe it. You know, when you show your children or your grandchildren in years to come what New York looked like in the year 2000, and then what New York looked like just a year later, they're going to say, what happened?
And President Trump, after this interview, offered space in his 40 Wall Street building, which is about half a mile from the World Trade Center, to first responders and financial firms who were displaced in the wake of the attacks. And in 2020, he then awarded a $2 million 9/11 Memorial Act grant to the 9/11 Memorial in New York City. And now today, the president and First Lady Melania's visit to the Pentagon is coming less than a week after the president signed an executive order on Friday renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War. This is a designation that it held until just after World War II. Here's the president on the reasoning behind the name restoration. Look.
So we won the First World War, we won the Second World War, we won everything before that and in between, and then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense. So we're going Department of War. Well, I think I've gotten peace because of the fact that we're strong. If we weren't strong, those 7 deals I told you about, the 7 wars, a majority of them wouldn't have happened.
President Trump says that the War Department sends a message of victory and peace through strength. The Pentagon Memorial Observance is scheduled for today at 8:45 a.m. The first plane hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center on this day 24 years ago at 8:46 a.m. Carrie, back to you.
Thanks for that update, Mariotsu, NTD's White House correspondent.
And the annual Tunnel to Towers 5K run and walk is coming up. It follows the footsteps of firefighter Stephen Siller, who carried 60 pounds of gear through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel and ultimately gave his life to save others at the Twin Towers. The event happens on the last Sunday of September every year to raise funds for first responders and veterans. I will be there, Tiffany Meyer will be there, and one of our producers who's a veteran himself will be there talking with folks and putting in those steps for our country's many heroes. But next we'll be speaking with Kevin Hogan, who's out there in New York City for the memorial events happening for 9/11 there today. Kevin, what's happening there?
Well, Steph, people have come here from around the world to be in New York City on 9/11 to remember that fateful day. People from Manchester, people from Belgium who were in school when 9/11 happened, and when they came home, the terrorist attacks in the United States were the only thing on the news. And I spoke to a service member who was in the Pentagon when the hijacked plane struck. Here's what he told me.
And you understand the first airplane hit a building over here, the first building over here. And then we understand that something happened. So at the beginning we thought that it's an accident. We never thought it's a terror attack. And after a few minutes or maybe half an hour, we understand that it's something which is very unique or unusual. And then rumors came like from all over. And then we understand the airplane that hit the Pentagon actually hit the other side of the building, and we knew that we need to evacuate. And DC in that day was a city that I never thought that I will see. It was a very different city. You know, in the army, it's like that's what you do. You hold yourself, you try to understand what's the best way to function, and you just function. And I think that everybody were in kind of a shock. It wasn't something that was expected. It was out of the blue. And we were just getting through the day and trying to understand what's the best usage with our capabilities, and that's it. There was nothing much we can do.
An enormous amount of bravery on that day, and clearly so many people were impacted by 9/11. And some of the New Yorkers here that I spoke to this morning tell me that they are, understandably, very sad today. But they point to the fact that the financial district has rebuilt, New York City has survived COVID, and that the city is roaring back and people are coming back to New York City, and that the city is New York strong. Back to you.
Evidence of that right behind you, right there in the middle of it all. Thank you so much, Kevin Hogan. And coming up, every September 11, many people feel off without knowing why. A psychologist will join us in studio to talk about ways to honor and remember while healing wounds that run deep. Stay with us for that.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
We said we'd never give in to a meltdown.
Okay.
And we'd never babysit with a screen. We said we'd never let the toys take over.
Mariella!
Never leave the house looking, well, and never let them out of our sight. Skylar, come here. Cars get hot fast, and kids can be at risk. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
And we're headed live now to the 9/11 Memorial Plaza in New York City, where this year's 9/11 Memorial Ceremony is beginning. Let's have a look at that. And we see Mayor Bloomberg talking to Andrew Cuomo. There's current Mayor Eric Adams. They're all gathered for the solemn event that happens every year on 9/11.
And we'll be tuning in as they observe a moment of silence at 8:46. And joining us in studio is psychologist Dr. Shahrzad Jalali, who's joining us to speak about the trauma that many Americans and indeed people around the world experienced on that tragic day, 9/11, so many years ago, but still stays with us all. Something that you're saying actually people can heal from, even as they may be experiencing some kind of re-traumatization or those feelings all coming up again today as we pause to remember and honor those people who are lost. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. And I, as we kick off, I want to ask, I was there, I watched the whole thing happen on 24th Street, and I think I don't think about it, and then here it is, it's 9/11, but so many people process trauma and grief differently. What are some of the things that people who either were in New York, were in DC or in Pennsylvania, or just were bombarded with the nonstop coverage as a collective nation? What are some of the emotions that people are processing, and how can they deal with it positively?
So something that happens when we go through a traumatic event is the body encodes the memory. So it's a little bit different than what the psyche is doing. The psyche remembers it as a memory, but the body remembers it as a felt sense. So we kind of encode the sounds, the noises, the smells, and everything else that's associated with it. Believe it or not, even the time of the year. So when we get closer to that point, maybe the psyche just wants to move on and forget and pretend it didn't happen because it's not a good memory to recall. But the body goes through it as if it's going through it again. And the only way to get out of that dynamic is to actually feel it in increments so that the body remembers it actually survived and it's safe. So this time around, we're feeling it in a different felt sense that we did when we actually went through the traumatic event.
And how do you recommend folks who are dealing with this kind of felt sense of grief and shock and all those things in their bodies and in our hearts and minds, what do you recommend to deal with that this time around and really continue processing it and hopefully heal?
That's a great question. So there are numerous ways of doing this, but it's actually very simple. First of all, we want to acknowledge that this is happening because most of the time we feel a little bit off, but we don't really let ourselves even acknowledge that we're going through something like this. We're like, I don't know what's happening. I'm just not feeling that great today. So bringing attention to the fact that, oh, it's this anniversary that causes tension for me. And then sitting in silence for a few moments to kind of notice what's happening in the body. Maybe your heart rate is going up, maybe you're feeling anxious or anything else that may be happening. And then going through techniques, very simple things like breathing, like being in nature, like connecting to other people, that actually calm down the nervous system. And when you do this in small increments, because neuroscience teaches us we don't need to do one big thing. We just need to do repeated small things for the psyche and the body to recover.
Wow, I love that gentle approach. It seems so natural.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
taking
doable.
little bites with the increments. Now, I want to explore your book, The Fire That Makes Us.
Yes.
You identify 10 emotional survival archetypes. Can you expand on that?
Yes.
And how we could apply that to moments, not only with the grief from 9/11, but with this very tragic death that happened last night of Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
It feels like the nation is dealing with 9/11 at a much more visceral level this year than perhaps in the last 10 or 15 years.
Yes, the book is about trauma and what our psyche and our body goes through when we experience it. Now, we have to keep in mind there are two types of trauma. There's the big T trauma, like the ones you're pointing out. There's also little traumas, everything that we go through to pretty much survive life. All of us go through it, believe it or not. And the way we kind of cope with that comes in different shapes or forms depending on our typology and our resources. So I have a website that displays a quiz that you can go take, and it will tell you what is your most prominent type of responding to situations. So to just name a few, the awakener wants to advocate for something after it happens.
The awakener.
Yes, and bring meaning to it and bring attention to the cause. The reactor feels everything with a lot of intense emotions and has a lot of potential anger and wants to display these emotions somehow. The drifter tends to want to essentially disengage from everything, numb themselves. So as I point out just a few, you can resonate with which one potentially is your more prominent one. Now keep in mind, we probably all do all 10, but 1 or 2 are our main prominent ones that we usually go to as we're trying to survive life. So in the book, we kind of just give you a script on how this shows up and what to do about it as you go.
Yeah, that does beg the question for me. What does that prescribe then different ways to handle that response, and also what determines the choices that our body or our felt sense makes in which response we have?
Our typology. Okay. So depending on if you're a type A personality or what resources you have at your disposal or how you have problem solved over the years, essentially. But the first step is to bring awareness to it, to recognize your own pattern. Because once you do that, then you can manipulate your pattern or keep the types or the parts that work for you and essentially do something different for the parts that don't.
Even while in that state of shock or traumatized, you have some agency, you're saying.
Absolutely.
There is something you've seen that work with folks you work with?
Absolutely. So we all have very unconscious patterns that we partake in life. Once we bring consciousness to them, we can integrate them into our being and digest them. Now, keep in mind, that doesn't mean, for example, if I have an anxious typology, I will get to a point that I won't ever have an anxious typology, but it means that I'll have a lot of control over it.
Mm-hmm.
And how do the various archetypes go through the process of healing? Because you had mentioned we all have bits of each of them, and you hear this commonly about the stages of grief, but you're also saying that depending on which of these archetypes is most prominent, it will affect how the person endures trauma and recovery.
Yes. So these things get shaped by pretty much a bunch of things. Our typology to start, and then our upbringing, our level of resilience, and the resources that were around us and are around us at the moment. So once we recognize them, we start to notice what parts actually work to our advantage. We never want to mess with the good thing, so we're going to let those things be, and then we want to recognize what parts actually stand in our way in order to achieve whatever it is that we are wanting to achieve. And when we can recognize it, we tend to find our own resources with it. The thing in psychology is we never want to prescribe one thing to everyone, because we are all very unique beings with a very unique story. But what we want to do is we want to take that fire and work it for us instead of letting it work against us.
And this is so fascinating, and I think it's such an important discussion for all the folks out there who are really thinking this through today. And as we speak, we can see the ceremony in New York City beginning to remember and honor the lives that have been lost. And we can see the flag there being carried by members of the military.
And on the right side, you can see the Pentagon ceremony and the gathering beginning to happen. And Dr. Jalali, thank you for remaining with us as we observe this very solemn occasion. We're going to come right back to our interview with you as we tune in.
Spread stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. All the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, see, 'twas that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Right, quick, mark.
And we're watching the proceedings down at the 9/11 Memorial here on this somber 24th occasion of the 9/11 attacks.
Yeah, joined still by Dr. Shahrzad Jalali, a psychologist in New York City. And Dr. Jalali, as we finish up here, as we've seen just now in this beautiful memorial, all those who survived, those who perished in those acts of war on U.S. soil, all those years ago on 9/11 have had to stay strong as a part of surviving that trauma and those events. You've said that there is a kind of hidden cost to staying strong, especially after terrible events such as that on 9/11. What do you mean by that, and what are your final thoughts for those who do continue on?
So when we survive an event, the root of the word in Latin means overcoming life, right? We don't realize that a part of us actually dies in order to be able to do that. Kind of like when a part of the body gets dismembered, that comes at a cost, right? But this dismemberment is happening in the psyche. That's where the word remember, by the way, comes from. We want to reattach it, but in a way that is less painful. So there are a lot of ways that we can do this by kind of just noticing how we're feeling at this moment and doing rituals with intentions that bring us some relief, but at the same time coming back to the present moment, so not getting consumed by it. I do think it's important to remember that all survival comes at a cost. Yes, we're strong, but that doesn't mean that we want to ignore the fact that we have to honor that and heal from it.
We appreciate your advice on this somber morning of remembrance. Dr. Shahrzad Jalali, the new book, The Fire That Makes Us. Thank you for sharing that with us. We appreciate
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to now go to a quick break, and we'll be back with our 9/11 coverage very quickly.
With almost 4 decades in the spotlight, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. With her gorgeous, age-defying skin, US Weekly says whatever she's doing, it's clearly working. How does her skin still look firm, smooth, and youthful at 58? It's meaningful beauty. And now, with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever, delivering our age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin to fight wrinkles where they begin. Just wait until you see the difference meaningful beauty can make for you.
Instant hydration, instant plumping. My skin looks amazing. What I'm most proud of is over 5 million women have trusted Meaningful Beauty, and they're getting great results. And I get that feedback from them in airports, supermarkets, walking down the street, and I love it.
And today, we are celebrating 20 years of Meaningful Beauty with a brand new offer you don't want to miss. You can get the entire advanced Meaningful Beauty system with all 5 age-defying super treatments. And when you order today, you'll receive our Targeted Treatment Duo, a $128 value free. Introducing the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules to target crow's feet, forehead lines, and lines around your mouth. Plus, you'll also get the new Skin Renewing Facial Tool with heat, massage, and red light to boost the absorption of the wrinkle smoothing capsules and reduce the appearance of puffiness. The Skin Renewing Facial Tool and the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules together create Meaningful Beauty's amazing targeted treatment duo.
This plus this equals incredible results.
Get all this, a $300 value for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
If you haven't tried Meaningful Beauty yet, this new offer is something you don't want to miss.
This special offer is not available in any store, so don't wait. Scan the code, call the number below, or go to meaningfulbeauty.com right now.
Hey, boss. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
I said I'm fine.
Since I was little, it was only like me and my parents.
You think you created family out of characters?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna take that and make it into a song.
Me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at on the way out? In my head, in my head, in my head.
Hey, son.
Hey, Pop.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. What we're looking at now is a live feed of the 9/11 memorial happening at the World Trade Center right now in New York City. We'll be staying with this coverage all day long. We'll also have coverage from D.C. at the Pentagon. And of course, there'll be memorials in Pennsylvania where the flight went down. On the bottom right, you can see the feed from the Pentagon where the president will be speaking and visiting. And right now, we're going to be joined live by Kirk Offal. He's a Navy veteran. Kirk, it's been 24 years since 9/11. Do we have Kirk? And it looks like we're just waiting for Kirk to join us. And while we do, we'll stay with this live feed of New York simultaneously with DC. And we're going to bring on Kirk Offal, Navy veteran. Kirk, thanks for joining us this morning. When I think of this topic of 9/11, thank you so much. Obviously a very somber occasion. It's hard to discuss 9/11 on this 24th occasion without mentioning the tragic shooting yesterday of Charlie Kirk. And of course, it both seems like the common thread here is extremism and people taking action over extremism. Charlie Kirk, of course, father of two, and the political rhetoric and the temperature seems so high now. How do you process events like this when you have this sort of double whammy, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thanks for asking. It's a tough one. I'll be honest. I'm a father of three. I have three kids in college right now, and all three of those children, they're closer in age to Charlie Kirk than they are to me. And that, I think, was the first time that I've seen these college kids stumble and really been caught off guard. They haven't, prior to this, these digital pioneers that are millennials and Gen Z that have been born with technology in their hands and social media in their hands since day one, they've not lost a luminary within their orbit, right? So it's a very sad day. Although I did not know Charlie Kirk, I had a great deal of respect for his patriotism and his commitment to trying to make America a better place. And I zoom out of this and I think about it as though if this was a political assassination on a large figure on the other opposing side of the aisle, such as like an AOC. And the answer is I'd feel still just as bad today as I did if it was someone that was on a completely different opposing aisle. And I think that we as Americans should all stop and reflect. We should be taking the time today to give some love and support to the Charlie Kirk family, because there's now a widow and two kids without a father. But we should pause as a nation and use September 11th to reflect on the tragedy of September 10th and really try to reflect, where are we as a nation? And if anything, maybe Charlie Kirk's company, the turning point, is really this assassination becomes the turning point for our nation. And maybe that's what his whole purpose in life is. And this is something that's going to be a part of his legacy. But we have to really de-escalate this rhetoric and the tension that exists.
Baron Gerard
Drives it.
Yeah, and excuse me, we just had a moment of, we're watching the live feeds, of course, of these 9/11 memorials taking place right now. And Trump is arriving at the Pentagon. And what I want to ask you next is about, there's this fear now. There was this horrific attack on a public transportation on a Ukrainian refugee. It was the video footage was live. And of course, even my son, a 12-year-old, came up to me and mentioned what had happened yesterday on this campus in Utah. There needs to be some heightened security. With your military background, what can we as Americans do to acknowledge that there are these new threats and to remain vigilant?
Yeah, great question again. And I think the one thing we have to do is we have to have an exchange of conversations. Today you have two teams, my team and the other team, and we have to stop acting like that, and we need to start acting as one team. And I think that the best way to begin is to have a healthy exchange of ideas. Some people call those debates. I think that's what Charlie Kirk was doing, was he was simply trying to, there's nobody that can't respect a person that could go from one part of the country to the next, walk onto any college campus and have the confidence to go. And I think that the technology that our kids are using is giving them more transparency and more visibility into the real world life scenarios that they see. So this is the first time millennials and Gen Z are seeing death at the front door, watching, innocent people being stabbed on trains or public transportation vehicles, or watching someone like this who was a 31-year-old kid who was just an advocate for his peer group, these millennials, as they evolve. And all he was simply trying to do was create debate and a healthy exchange of ideas. I think that we need to pick up where he left off and continue to have these types of discussions.
Yes, absolutely. Sober civility, discourse, so important in our society. And Kirk, I'd like to ask you to remain with us. We're gonna cut to the live feed as the moment of silence will be coming. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll be going to that shortly. But as we proceed, I want to get a sense for what you feel as a veteran as we get to 9/11. Obviously, this is our 24th lap now of this event. But what do you feel as someone who wore the uniform and served, and to remember this particular day when really the world changed from a post-Cold War era to, sort of these, just a different world, really?
Yeah, I think everybody's world changed in spite of or because of the circumstances that we had to go through. And I don't think anybody had the same experience. So for me personally, I remember exactly where I was on September 11th, but most importantly, I remember what I felt like as an American on September 12th. And we have to talk about September 11th because we have to remember the names of the fallen, and we have to not only remember them, we have to take action. Like if you're a parent right now, you should be making sure on September 11th your kids are suffering through a 1 or 2 hour video watching what the remembrance was like. And I asked my kids, like, if you were to have fallen on September 11th, what would you want us to be doing to honor you once you've passed on? And I think for me, I remember the bravery of the first responders that were running into those buildings as they were getting ready to come down. And I remember September 12th when, yes, we were hurt and this nation was definitely harmed, but it also unified us, and it's what brought us together. And I hope that, much like how September 11th gave us September 12th, I hope that September 10th will start giving us more hope for the future of September 11th, because September 11th should be a day of reverence and a remembrance of the heroes that raced into buildings when others were trying to race out. But we also have to remember what it did to this nation. And on September 12th, we started coming closer together as a nation. And I hope that today we could use the experience of Charlie Kirk to create the turning point that he tried to create when he was only 18 years old.
Yeah, you mentioned this concept of the polarization and you're on this team versus that team. You recall the bravery of the first responders during 9/11. I remember living just a block from the Armory, where when a shift would come out of 9/11, they were met with so much support, with people looking to help them recuperate before they went back down to ground zero. And as you can see, we have a live feed, President Trump just about to arrive at the Pentagon. And there he is. We see him walking, about to potentially deliver his remarks. And what I want to ask is, and I think what we'll do now is we're going to tune into the footage. If you'll stay with us for just 1 or 2 more questions, if you have the time.
Of course.
We would like to tune in to the moment of silence that's going to be observed here at Ground Zero and at the Pentagon.
Of course.
Please remain standing for the presentation of colors and the playing of the national anthem performed by the United States Air Force Band, directed by First Lieutenant Julian Sconiers, and the Joint Armed Forces Chorus, directed by Captain Bonnie Alger. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Dr. Paul W. Ambrose. Specialist Craig S. Amundsen, United States Army. Petty Officer, 3rd Class, Melissa Rose Barnes, United States Navy. Master Sergeants, Mats J. Belkey, United States Army, retired. Dr. Yenino Beatru.
And we're looking at a split screen on the left. All the names of the perished on 9/11 being read in a solemn event that happens every year. And on the right, we see President Trump and the First Lady and Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, all there to honor at the Pentagon, where the terrorist plane struck. And we're joined still with Navy veteran Kirk. Kirk, thank you for staying with us this morning. What I want to ask you next is, it's been 24 years now since the attacks. How has the meaning of 9/11 for you and for some of your veteran alumni evolved over time as the memory has become a bit more distant and there's more perspective, but the threats continue and they seem even more, in some ways, emboldened today than at that time in 2001?
Yeah, for sure. If you look at what September 11th, 2011 was, 2001 was, it was a turning point for our nation. September 11th was a devastating day and attack. September 12th was the day that America came together as one, and we took the fight to the war on terror. Now, that was an entire generation, 24 years of soldiers that were putting themselves in harm's way to make sure that there was no more September 11th that happened on our soil. September 11th was a turning point. September 10th of 2025 is another turning point. I'm hoping that September 11th of 2025 becomes the September 12th of 2001, which means that we start coming together as a nation and start finding the things that bring us closer together rather than just looking at the things that separate us by so many massive divides. We have more things in common than we have those that we oppose from each other. I think that we needed more leaders, right? This world that we live in doesn't suffer from a lack of genius or intelligence, but it does suffer from a lack of leaders. And I think that you're seeing 24 years of active duty military people that are coming away from environments that are home of the most advanced weapons, machinery, and technology ever built in the U.S. military. And it happens to be an incubator for leadership. So if you look at our presidential election, our last cycle was the first time that we had 2 military veterans both running for vice president. So I think that what you saw was a war that drew some of our bravest from the top 1% of our nation's population that put on that uniform. And now they're coming out 24 years later and they want one thing, and that's peace. And you're going to start seeing them gravitate towards roles of leadership in politics, or just like things like Talking Point USA or Turning Point USA's, places that are going to go be disruptive and try to drive change not only in the community and the society that we live in, but humanity overall.
And Kirk, you yourself have had a decorated career in the military and now in business leadership. How did 9/11 shape the path of your own career and your mission today? Clearly, you are very focused on bringing together the divide in the nation. So how has 9/11 shaped your own personal trajectory?
No, great question. And I'm proud to answer it like this. You know, I went into the military, I came out, and then I watched after the war started, and as the war began to trickle, a large amount of my fellow veterans transitioning out of the military, and without finding an opportunity of meaningful significance again, I've seen too many of them harm themselves. We started a technology incubator for labor, which is to provide opportunities and careers to veterans in transition. We feel our only purpose as a business was to stop the cycle of suicide within the veteran community. The cycle of suicide rose as a byproduct of this war. People that join the military don't do it to make money, they do it to make a difference. And we felt like if we could get them transitioned out of the military and give them a career of something that's meaningful and significant again, such as building Stargate, building the Manhattan Project of the Fifth Industrial Revolution, programs that allow us to build technology using the skills that they got in the military that have the ability to transform humanity in a way that we haven't seen since powered flight. So our only purpose in starting this business was to stop the cycle of suicide within the veteran community. The veteran community suicide rate rose as a byproduct of this war. If we could find meaningful careers and jobs for these veterans in transition, not only will we reduce the cycle of suicide within the veteran community, but we will give jobs back that build back the middle class. Jobs that don't require a college degree, but jobs that pay you a great quality of life that allow you to buy homes and send kids to schools. So I think that if it wasn't for September 11th, I wouldn't have co-founders of my business that are both combat infantry that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, who came back and share my conviction that the primary line of business we use to generate revenue is a human being. And those humans, they need to be offered the opportunity to have a job that inspires them, makes them feel so safe, and allows them to be fulfilled by what they're doing. The data center industry that I'm in is growing faster than every other industry because of the growth of every other industry. So now you have veterans coming out that have experience in leadership and advanced technologies that can now go put those skills to work. And because they are fulfilled by what they're doing and they're giving significance back to an industry, they're less likely to harm themselves. So it all comes full circle.
Well, Kirk, we thank you for your active duty service and potentially even more for this next chapter of your career where you're helping veterans transition into civilian life. Thank you for joining us on this very important 9/11.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
And we can see here President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump at the memorial happening now in Washington, D.C. And we are actually expecting a press conference in Utah regarding the assassination of political commentator Charlie Kirk, and we'll be tuning into that soon. Meanwhile, we'll take a look at this memorial.
Captain Lawrence D. Getzford, United States Navy. Cortez Gee. Brenda C. Gibson. Colonel Ronald F. Galinsky, United States Navy, United States Army, retired. Ian J. Gray. Diane Hale McKenzie. Stanley R. Hall.
Recognize the significance of the day. Historically, on 9/11, law enforcement has come together as a group to recognize and honor.
Now to Utah, where there's a press conference about the Charlie Kirk.
To preserve the ideals of this country, the freedoms of this country. And instead, we find ourselves today hunting a murderer who chose to violate our rights, the rights of an individual within this country. Just to recap yesterday's events, at around 12:20 p.m., political influencer Charlie Kirk was at Utah Valley University participating in a student-sponsored event with Turning Point USA. Charlie was shot at that event. He was transported to a local hospital where he later passed. Last night, his body was moved to the state office of the medical examiner. We will continue to facilitate movements to get him home today and with his family. Yesterday, during the investigative process, we located a couple of persons of interest. We interviewed those individuals, and after releasing them and after clearing them of being suspects, they faced scrutiny. They faced threats. We asked the public to be patient with the investigative process. These individuals were not suspects. They were people of interest. We ask that you do not impose into those people and that investigative process. They don't deserve that harassment for being subject to that. I'd like to thank all the investigators that are involved in this. They have worked around the clock, all day yesterday, through the night last night. Investigators from the State Bureau of Investigations, from county, from city agencies, the university, our federal partners with the FBI, the ATF, and many others. Those are just a few of the people that we have involved in this. I'd like to thank all of them for their strong work. Through all that work last night, we were able to make a few breakthroughs. We were able to track the movements of the shooter. Starting at 11:52 a.m., the subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood. Our investigators have worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads. We do have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we are confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately. Last night I communicated with Erica. The family's devastated. As a commissioner of public safety, as a father, as a husband, I can only imagine what that family's going through. The heinous event that happened yesterday is not Utah. This is not what we're known for. Over the past several weeks, we've seen this state come together to help families in mourning, come together as a community to show what Utah is known for a state of character, of service, of camaraderie, of a neighboring feel. We will not stand for what happened yesterday. We are exhausting every lead. We have every officer invested in this, every investigator, every local agency. The outpouring of support from the law enforcement community has been astounding. We are investing everything we have into this, and we will catch this individual. Having walked through the crime scene, through the hallways of this school, through the classrooms, I can't imagine what the people on scene felt as well. A horrific event where some of them barricaded in classrooms, some of them ran in fear. Can't overstate the tragedy and the horrific event that yesterday was, and how we will work to bring to justice the actions of one individual or any other individuals that assisted in that. Our state has gone through a lot, and we will come out successful. With that, I'll turn the time over to Special Agent Bowles in charge.
Good morning. My name is Robert Bowles, and I am the Special Agent in charge of the Salt Lake Field Office. Following yesterday's tragic shooting of Charlie Kirk, FBI agents have been working around the clock in coordination with our law enforcement partners. We are and will continue to work nonstop until we find the person that has committed this heinous crime and find out why they did it. This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. The FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. Now, I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation. The FBI's mission is to protect the American people. It's to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Any attack on the First Amendment is an attack on the very foundation of our democracy. That is why we will relentlessly pursue this case and the shooter until we find him. We also continue to grieve with the family and the community. It's our community.
All right, we seem to have lost some of the sound here, waiting for that to come back. But many things revealed just now in this press conference. We're watching Robert Bowles, an FBI special agent, speaking about receiving 130 or more tips from the community about this event. And we're just looking now at the Utah Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, Bo Mason, also made some remarks earlier.
That's right. Some things that were revealed is that they seem to have identified it being a male, one shooter. They seem to have retraced the path of escape. They've recovered the weapon that they believe was used, but of course, they still have not yet been able to track down the shooter that they believe, the sole shooter that they believe is responsible.
Both speakers saying that they will bring, and they are bringing, the full force of all of their resources to bear on this investigation as they continue to look into every tip that's given, the footwear impression, the forearm imprint that we just heard Bowles saying was identified at the scene. And of course, also noting the tragic school shooting that happened yesterday, also in Colorado. We also heard from the Utah Commissioner of Public Safety saying that there has been footage that they've been using in their investigation that they're not releasing at this time, though they may release it to the media if they need to in order to further their investigation. So far, it's just been used to track the movements of the shooter on his way to that fatal moment.
We're going to tune back in. We have recovered the sound.
This was a targeted event. We don't believe that the community is at risk. However, we're exhausting every resource to find him, and we will do so.
Mr. Mourns, you're saying that you've got...
From the images you have, can you see clearly the suspect's face? You say he's college age, you believe he was from this university, and how far do you think he may have gone in this time segment?
So I can't comment specifically on his face or any details such as that, as it's continuing to be a part of the investigation, and again, we'll release that shortly. However, we're doing everything we can to find him, and we're not sure how far he has gone yet.
And you do believe it's male?
Is there image of his face?
We have images of the suspect.
So between those images and the gun that you've been able to recover, do you believe you know who this person is, the person that you're looking for at this point?
Again, as part of the investigation, we're not releasing any details such as that.
Any fingerprints or DNA?
We are exhausting all of our resources to be able to collect those, but that's, again, part of the investigation.
And
how did the suspect get on the roof? Excuse me?
You said you found the weapon. Have you been able to trace back the owner of that weapon or who purchased it?
We are working on that, but again, part of the investigation.
Agent Bowles has been a lot of turnover in the FBI. Do you think that's impacting the investigation at all?
Not at all. We've got complete and total support from everyone, from the director on down, and it's been an incredible supportive environment Not so far.
Are tweets like the one yesterday useful though, where we announced that there's a suspect in custody?
All I can say is that we're working the investigation the best we have with the environment we're given.
Those are all the questions for right now. Thank you, everybody.
Forum Utah is concluding. We saw Bo Mason, Commissioner of the Utah Department of Public Safety, who was partnering with Robert Bowles, the local special agent in charge of the Salt Lake FBI Bureau, and they were giving the details on where the investigation stands at this moment.
That's right. And we also saw earlier a moment of silence, those memorial services still taking place for 9/11, which the nation is pausing to recall and honor the lives lost on that day and since that day in that tragic event that changed the world and the nation. And we're watching now First Lady Melania Trump, President Trump, there in D.C. at the memorial there.
States Navy. Antoinette M. Sherman. Diane M. Simmons. And her husband, George W. Simmons. Donald D. Simmons. Cheryl D. Sincock. Chief Greg H. Smallwood, United States Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Gary F. Smith, United States Army, retired. Mary Ray Soper. Robert Spiesman. Patricia J. Statz. Edna L. Stevens. Norma Lang Sturley. Sergeant Major Larry L. Strickland, United States Army. Hilda E. Taylor. Lieutenant Colonel Kip P. Taylor, United States Army. Leonard E. Taylor.
And have been listening to the names of all of those fallen in this tragic event that we're remembering today. We're joined for expert insights on the attacks on 9/11 and the threats and other considerations since then. We're joined by American defense policy analyst Frank Gaffney now. Thank you so much for joining us today, Frank. In your view, how well is the Pentagon now positioned to defend against another large-scale terror attack?
I think if it were simply up to the Pentagon, we would probably find that we are falling short of the mark. I'm a bit concerned, to be honest with you, that even if you throw in, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI and the intelligence community, in addition to the military, we are still woefully ill-prepared. And in part, that's because I think since 9/11 to the present day, we have not been clear about the nature of the enemy. We're thinking about this as terrorists that inexplicably seek to do us harm. What we're actually confronting, and we have to be cognizant of it if we're to have a chance of actually contending with it, let alone defeating it, is a hostile ideology. I use the term Sharia to describe it. It is kind of the Islamic operating code. It's not the only threat we face in the world, needless to say. In fact, part of the problem we confront is that it's joined forces with the communist left and globalists. But just to stay with the jihadis, they are animated by the authoritative traditions and precepts of Islam. Not all Muslims, fortunately, embrace them, but those who do conform to Sharia are obliged to pursue jihad violently if they can, stealthily if they can't. And I think that our government is, well, for one thing, penetrated and under the influence of people who are, Sharia supremacists, notably the government of Qatar, much in the news at the moment, but also the various organizations and other nations and jihadist enterprises, including the Muslim Brotherhood, by the way, that the Qataris very, very aggressively fund and otherwise enable. So that's the problem, it seems to me, is we're not clear about it, and therefore we're not as prepared to deal with it as we should be.
A great assessment there, Frank. Could you lay out for us in regards to Qatar? I guess you're referring to, everything that's happening there in the Gaza Strip, but perhaps even further, more broadly, but the most pressing Islamic extremist threats America faces today and how defense policy should adapt.
Well, again, it's not just, Al-Qaeda here or ISIS there or the Taliban in another place. I'm talking about a global Islamic movement, as they call it, which believes that according to this doctrine of Sharia, they are obliged to seek the dominion of the entire world by Islam and to use violent means where they can to accomplish it. Qatar is indisputably the most generous state sponsor of terrorism, or this Sharia enterprise, if you will, in the world. And so thanks to them, the Muslim Brotherhood in Turkey and in parts of Europe, of course, the Middle East, elsewhere, and here is underwritten and is enabled by Qatar, Turkey and others among them too. This is part of the problem. Iran is another part of the problem. And, we're talking against the backdrop of this horrific murder of a man who was very clear-eyed about all of this, Charlie Kirk. And we know that there are assassination squads from Iran in our country right now. We have ample reason to believe that there are other jihadist organizations, from Hamas to Hezbollah to the Taliban to the IRGC, on, who are also here in our country, and homegrown counterparts, now coupled with Chinese People's Liberation Army personnel. This is a tremendous challenge to our law enforcement and national security, homeland security professionals. But I just keep coming back to this point. We have to be able to understand the enemy. Sun Tzu, the famous Chinese strategist, said a couple thousand years ago, if you do not know your enemy, you cannot defeat them. And that's, I think, where we find ourselves today. I pray out of the loss of Charlie and this, memorializing of 9/11, that we will begin to get clear-eyed about this and begin taking effective action against those who espouse all of this and seek to use jihad against us inside our country and elsewhere around the world, lest they prevail.
Yeah. Lastly, Frank, as we wrap up, you've spoken about this tragic event with Charlie Kirk. It does come so close to the day of 9/11, and the shot itself seems to have been, there's no confirmation yet, but some kind of professional taking this shot. If you could just speak to final thoughts on the coinciding of these two events.
Well, I'm not sure that they're connected in any sense other than the people who are determined to destroy this country, whether they're the communists of China and their friends, whether it's the jihadists and their various enterprises, or some combination of the two, which is what I think we are increasingly confronting. They wanted to silence Charlie Kirk.
I hear you.
They don't want people to understand what he understood, and we need to overcome that in his absence.
Thank you so much for your time today, Frank Gaffney. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. We are looking live at the memorial in D.C., and we have a moment of silence right upon us now, which we will also observe. Thank you for your time again, Frank Gaffney.
24 years old. For many of us, the pain still lingers as we consider the heroic sacrifices made by many that day and by many more in the years of war that resulted. For those who grieve, we pray in the sentiment of Abraham Lincoln that you, O Lord, would assuage the anguish of their bereavement and leave only the cherished memory of the loved and lost and the solemn pride for those who have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. For those of our day who have taken up the cause to secure our homeland, to wield the sword in righteousness, to protect our neighbors, grant prudence to execute justice with honor, always mindful we are under your divine gaze. Grant the blessing of wisdom and insight for our leaders, that they may be guided to do your will. Grant humility throughout our land, acknowledging your goodness to us. And finally, we offer supplications for those who currently are deployed, underway, or on duty for our nation. Surround them with the protection of the angels and a joyful reunion with faithful loved ones. In your most holy name, amen. Please join me for a moment of silence for that minute of impact 24 years ago today.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, General Dan Kane, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
So that was a moment of silence just observed there in Washington, D.C. at the memorial for 9/11. We will continue to cover this memorial, and NTD News Today will also continue on after this live stream. Thank you so much for watching.
Distinguished visitors, veterans, first responders, fellow Americans, and most importantly, the families of our fallen from that day. Thank you for being here to gather in remembrance, to grieve our nation's loss, and draw strength from the heroism Americans demonstrated that day. September 11th reminds us that even in the darkest of times, American strength endures, and if attacked, we will immediately fight back. 24 years ago, on a beautiful morning here in Washington, American Airlines Flight 77 took off at 8:20 a.m. from Dulles International Airport with 59 passengers and crew bound for Los Angeles. Here at the Pentagon, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardmen, and civilians began what they thought would be an ordinary day of service. They kissed their loved ones goodbye, dropped kids off at daycare, and commuted in here for another day of duty, having no idea what they were about to face. 200 miles north of here, al-Qaeda terrorists took control of two aircraft, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175. At 8:46 a.m., the first plane was flown deliberately into the North Tower, and minutes later, the second airplane was flown into the second tower. We all knew at that very moment that our world had changed, that America was at war. And then at 9:37 a.m., just moments ago, 24 years ago, American Airlines Flight 77 ripped through the West Wall here at the Pentagon, where our flag outside the building now hangs. And this ground that we stand upon became hollowed. 2,977 were lost in the attacks that morning. The conventional wisdom is that our nation went to war weeks later in Afghanistan. The truth is, we went to war immediately, and America started to fight back before the attack was even over. In New York City, firefighters, police officers, paramedics, first responders, and everyday citizens charged into towers, climbing hundreds and hundreds of flights of stairs to rescue their fellow Americans. And right here in this courtyard at the Pentagon, as flames filled the corridors and smoke followed, service members and civilians went into that flame to save their fellow teammates. They covered their faces with T-shirts rolled in water to shield their skin and pushed through the fire and rubble. They carried the wounded out, and they went back in again and again and again and again until others had to stop them from going back. And even as this building burned, the Pentagon never shut down. Survivors organized, and thousands went to work to defend our nation. And there were 40 first responders on United Airlines Flight 93. 40 heroes who, unlike us who wear the cloth of our nation, never took an oath to protect and defend our nation. They just got on an airplane. And knowing full well what was happening, they found the courage and commitment to run forward in that airplane, sacrificing themselves over the fields of Pennsylvania to save Americans that they would never meet and never know. And I, for one, think of them every day and the gift of courage that they gave my squadron mates and I on that day. So as we come here together, let us reflect and let us never forget. Let us never forget the families who've shown us what true courage looks like as they continue to persevere through the years after. And let us all be inspired by the determination of those brave heroes who showed us that day what America is all about. And let anybody who ever considers attacking the United States remember those examples as well, and the great American warrior spirit that was shown that day. Thank you very much. And now it's my distinct honor to introduce our nation's Secretary of War. May we never forget our fallen. May we never forget our deployed. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of War, the Honorable Pete Hegseth.
24 years ago, Islamist terrorists massacred nearly 3,000 innocent American lives in New York City, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and right here at the Pentagon. The building you see behind me, the War Department, was targeted in an act of savage evil. And today on these hallowed grounds, we gather to honor those victims and heroes with the resolve to never forget. We gather to pay tribute to the first responders who charged into the flames and up the stairs, to those trapped on planes fighting their final fight, and to the families whose lives were forever altered by that fateful day. Like everyone in this audience, I remember exactly where I was when that first tower was struck. A college junior with a fresh set of Army fatigues in my dorm room closet, having just joined Army ROTC. Like too many Americans, I was naive to the threats brewing abroad and infiltrating our shores. But from that day forward, I felt an unshakable call to action, a duty to defend our sacred homeland with everything I had. Like all of you, 9/11 was the ultimate validator to serve. But I was not alone. An entire generation of warriors stepped forward, willing to pay the ultimate price to exact retribution and secure our country. Forged in the crucibles of Afghanistan and Iraq, we stood watch in distant lands on dangerous missions, often, in retrospect, nebulous missions, all to secure our people and so we could live in peace. War is an enduring aspect of the human condition, a tool that, when wielded wisely, ruthlessly punishes enemies intent on terrorizing or subjugating our nation. War must not become a mere tool for global social work, eager to risk American blood and treasure for utopian fever dreams. We should hit hard, wreak vengeance, and return home. For 2 decades, our warriors fought with valor every day, far from home, even though sometimes their leaders gave them nation-building missions and half-baked exits. Thankfully today, we have an American military that President Trump has now rebuilt twice. Yet despite the weight of history, the Department of War will always honor the service of our warriors and all they left behind, never straying from the warrior ethos they and those on 9/11 embodied and deserve. We best honor their memory and the memory of 9/11 by learning the correct lessons of that day and the decades of courage that followed. Full hearts, clear eyes. To every member of our War Department, past and present, you are the best, the real elite, the real 1% of this nation. Standing here today, we honor those 184 rings of the bell, souls lost at the Pentagon and on Flight 77. Even as first responders were grossly outnumbered by the wounded, many ran toward the chaos. cared for the injured, and comforted the dying. It was bedlam. But in that moment, American heroism was laid bare. That purpose, that spirit lives on in uniform today. Despite such tragedies, our republic endured. It endured that day. It endured on Flight 93, charging that cockpit, and at the Pentagon. It endured over those Islamists. It endured over 2 decades of war, and it endured stronger, wiser, and tougher, forged by the blood and courage of patriots. Our job now is to ensure that future generations inherit a strong and vigilant America. 9/11 is vivid for me and all of you, but it will soon live only in the history books for our youngest. We must teach our children that the price of freedom we love is eternal vigilance. Instill in them the importance of upholding America's Constitution, holding tight to our freedom and our faith, and relentlessly pursuing our enemies. Prepare them to defend this nation by the ballot, the wallet, and when necessary, the cloth of our country, because the world remains a viper's nest. It requires us. As I speak, hostile elements plot to curb our power and slaughter our people in our homeland, in our hemisphere, and halfway around the globe. Not everyone needs to wear a uniform, but some of us do. That is our profession and our promise to this nation. In closing, a reading from Scripture, Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 4. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. On this day, 24 years ago, we suffered. In the years since, we have endured. Our service and sacrifice have forged our character, and today we stand in hope for the future of our great nation. The young soldiers who take the oath give me hope. The young cops who wear the badge give me hope. The young firefighters who answer the call give me hope. The young agents who patrol our border give me hope. The life, example, and even death of Christ follower and American patriot Charlie Kirk give me hope. Sheer courage, no matter the arena. Charlie, we love you. We know that you have heard the Lord's words. Well done, good and faithful servant. Full heart, clear eyes. Like those on 9/11, he will never be forgotten. So I thank God for all of you and all of our fighters from that day to today and beyond. May God bless our warriors as they ruthlessly seek our enemies on behalf of the fellow citizens they love. We owe you and all of those who witnessed 9/11 nothing less. It is now my great honor to introduce to you our Commander-in-Chief, President Donald J. Trump.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Before we begin, let me express the horror and grief so many Americans at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk have felt. Charlie was a giant of his generation, a champion of liberty, and an inspiration to millions and millions of people. Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd. Very, very big. Thank you, my fellow Americans. 84 years ago this morning, the banks of the Potomac were filled with the clamor of construction workers who broke ground on the building now known as the Pentagon on September 11th, 1941. At the time, it was the biggest building ever built. From that moment forward, this structure stood as a monument to American strength, power, and cherished American freedom. Exactly 6 decades later, on September 11th, 2001, those same walls, built with the sweat and muscle, blood of our parents and grandparents, were scarred by flame and shaken by terror as our country came face to face with pure evil. On that fateful day, savage monsters attacked the very symbols of our civilization. Yet here in Virginia and in New York and in the skies over Pennsylvania, Americans did not hesitate. They stood on their feet and they showed the world that we will never yield, we will never bend, we will never give up, and our great American flag will never, ever fail. That terrible morning 24 years ago, time itself stood still. The laughter of school children fell silent. The rush of our traffic came to an absolute halt. And for 2,977 innocent souls and their families, the entire world came crashing down so suddenly. In the quarter of a century since those acts of mass murder, 9/11 family members have felt the weight of missed birthdays and empty bedrooms, journals left unfinished, and dreams left unfulfilled. To every member that still feels a void every day of your lives, the First Lady and I unite with you in sorrow. And today, as one nation, we renew our sacred vow that we will never forget September 11th, 2001. Amid the horror of that morning, some used cell phones and office lines to whisper their final words to those who mattered most. They whispered indeed. At 8:59 a.m. aboard United Flight 175, Brian Sweeney called his wife, Julie. He told her, "Do good, go have good times. I totally love you. I'll see you again. I'll meet you up there." 4 minutes later, his plane hit the south tower of the World Trade Center. At 9:12 a.m. aboard American Airlines Flight 77, Renee May called her mom. Just the day before, Renee had learned that she was 7 weeks pregnant, but she never got the chance to share the news. She simply said, "I love you, Mom." 25 minutes later, Renee's plane struck the Pentagon. So violent, a strike it was. At 9:53 a.m. aboard United Flight 93, Elizabeth Waineo called her stepmom. They're getting ready to break into the cockpit. What do I do? I love you so much. They're going to break in. 10 minutes later, Flight 93 ended in the hallowed field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. At 10:25 a.m., Tom McGinnis was trapped on the 92nd floor of the North Tower when he told his wonderful wife, Elena, on the phone, "There are people jumping from the floors above us. If we get out of here, it'll be a total miracle. I love you, darling. Take care of Caitlin, beautiful daughter." 3 minutes later, the tower fell.